So what's going on? So I want to make this video basically because I want to get this shit off my chest, and also this is informative, and also I want to get this kind of information out to, I guess, everyone and the right people who can actually use this. But before we get into this, there's a couple things I want to go over, like which are pretty important to this type of mindset of so you can know what the fuck's really going on. Kind of like the philosophy study about the integration of the shadow, which Carl Jung came up with, which is fascinating, and it talks about like your shadowy side, your dark side, to kind of embrace yourself, to make you a more well-rounded person. And I know that kind of sounds weird coming, but once you think about it, like, okay, say for example, somebody came up to attack you, or somebody you cared about or you loved, and you're just like an unconfrontational type person, right? You don't know how to defend yourself or anything like that, and you're just like, I don't believe in that. But this person comes, or these people or whatever, they come and they destroy you, or they destroy and take, or they destroy somebody you actually care about, because you're harmless. There's nothing that you could do to stop that. But the integration of the shadow is being able to like embrace something darker, stronger, or darker, or something more violent inside of you, to actually defend yourself or defend people you care about. But there's also times that where you should keep that under control, so you can be like civilized and stuff like that. So that is like the philosophy behind it. But also there's there's kind of another part to it when you integrate your shadow part, because I mean, even in the Bible, it says there's a time for peace and there's a time for war. There's a time to tear apart and there's a time to build. There's a time and a place for everything. There is a time to turn the other cheek, but there's a time when you don't, for protection or stuff like that. It's like, you know, like when Jesus was here, he was a lamb and he died and he rose again. But when he comes back, he's not going to be a lamb. He's going to be the lion, and he's going to destroy things. But so yeah, there's always this balance inside of us. But another interesting thing about the integration of the shadow is, if you do that, you can start to understand how somebody who is against you, your enemy, who would embrace that side of themselves, you can actually think like them, to know what they're going to do, the kind of plans that they would have for you, to destroy you, to hurt you, to control you. And if you can understand that and embrace the idea that not everybody's going to be good, not everybody's going to be right, not everybody's going to tell you the truth, that you're able to defend yourself and fight back from that. This is important. It's a psychological thing that's very important to understand, is embracing that side so that you can understand how somebody else can embrace that side if they were wanting to attack and hurt you. And the reason I'm bringing this up is, okay, I like playing fighting games like Tekken and stuff like that. I also like playing games like chess, where you're one-on-one with an opponent. Now, in those games, there's something called downloading. And downloading is when you figure out your opponent's plan against you, of how they want to defeat you. Now, if you know your opponent's plan, you can block the plan or counterattack it, so that you know you could see it before it happens, as the moves are happening, so you know how to maneuver or defend or fight back against that. So this video is more like get the information out so everybody can understand what's really going on, so that the right people can actually start making the right moves to counterattack what's really going on. So let's just say, hypothetically, that a country wanted to go to war with America, all right? What do you think they would think about that? Because America has a pretty good track record when it comes to war. Yeah, no pushovers. So So if you were going to attack a strong man, would you attack him in his strengths? No, that would be fucking stupid. Because even if you did win, you would probably get devastated and hurt in the process. No, if you're going to attack a strong man, you hit him in its weakness. And, you know, if a country wanted to go to war with America, it would be stupid to flat out say, hey, let's have a military war. A military war against America is going to be devastating. And history has proven that. That's going to be devastating. That's going to suck. It's going to hurt. But instead, start hitting America in a different spot. Start hitting America in a weakness. And then start hitting America not in its strength, but have a psychological war against America. I wonder what that would look like and how that would happen. So what would be America's greatest weakness? Well, that's easy, because everybody has one. It's right here. This right here is America's greatest weakness. So how's that a weakness? Well, let's see. The internet and social media is a very, very weird, interesting place. Like, if I go out and just have a normal day, somebody who I meet who's like normally kind and nice to me on the internet would be completely cruel, right? Somebody who would normally be my friend in real life, if I meet them on the internet, they'll be my enemy just because they can. People will pretend to ignore you when actually that's the exact opposite of what they're doing. People attack other people. They're actually, every single insecurity that a person has, they can take out on other people, and it makes them feel better. This is just the internet, and everybody knows it because everybody's been online and seen it. People are just nasty on the internet. Also, you can lie about things easier because people will get together and believe a lie faster than they will believe a truth. And here's one thing I want you to wrap your head around with this thing. Okay? If there was no social media, I want this to sink in. If there was no social media, there would have been no riots. Let that sink in. If there was no social media, there would have been no riots. Let this sink in for a minute. And I just found out what cancel culture is. I found out about it through Tommy Lauren on. She did it on an Instagram story, and I was blown away because I didn't know what it was, because I don't give a fuck about things like that. But I just found out what cancel culture is. Cancel culture is when somebody doesn't like you, and they get a bunch of other people who don't like you to say they don't like you, and then the person they're doing that to apologizes for it, and they cancel themselves. I couldn't believe what the fuck I was hearing. Like, you can't be serious. That can't be cancel culture. I'm like, geez, are you fucking kidding me? So let me get this straight. Every single person who's successful in this lifetime or on social media, you're going to have haters. But in cancel culture, you actually listen to those haters and give them validations, which makes them feel better about themselves. And then you basically are canceling yourself because they don't like you. Are you fucking out of your mind listening to your hate? So that's what cancel culture is. Let me give you an example. Okay, so do you know the number one download videos in all of YouTube is Justin Bieber's first music video, Baby Baby? Did you realize that? I'd say he's done pretty well for himself with that song and ever since that day. That's an example of you don't listen to your haters. Haters make you immortal. If somebody's trying to cancel you, they're making you more popular. Stop fucking listening to them. I could not believe what I was hearing. You've got to be shitting me. So how does this kind of apply to America being in a new war? Well, I'm going to break this because there's a lot of information. To keep this as simple as possible to follow along, I'm going to break this down in chronological order so you can see it and the key players and what's really going on, the bigger picture. So, like in 2015, Bill Gates did a TED Talk and has been saying this for a bit, where he basically broke down the exact order of exactly what the coronavirus would be. He said this in 2015, where he talked about this kind of thing exactly happening. Check this out.
Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. We're not ready for the next epidemic. The impact of a huge epidemic, like a flu epidemic, would be phenomenal because all the supply chains would break down, there'd be a lot of panic, many of our systems would be overloaded, and so we all hope that doesn't come along. But being ready for epidemics of different sizes, there's a lot more we should do. The resources to go engage in the affected countries, the allocation decisions. As we've seen various flu scares come along, we haven't had a super good response. Using the flu vaccine doesn't really work that well in the equatorial regions because you don't get this lead time like we do in the northern hemisphere. But a universal flu vaccine, I think, would be brilliant because it would reduce pandemic risk. I also think the human health benefit would be larger, particularly in developing countries, than we'd expect.
So what makes that very interesting is Bill Gates saying that, and then in 2015 and 5 years later, China reproduces that exact virus. That's interesting. Well, okay, that's 2015. Now we're going to go to about 2018, where the South African ruler, or whatever his name is, makes a statement, and the big thing starts happening where they start killing white farmers and taking their lands. But but what was actually going on is it started off as a race thing, just killing white farmers, but that was just on the surface. They were actually killing white and black farmers. So they were just killing everybody, but it started out as a race war, which race is ridiculous. We'll go over that here in a minute. But so they killed these farmers. It doesn't matter. It's under the flagship of all the white farmers, and they take their lands, but they're also killing whites and blacks. They're just saying we're just going to take it from whites. They're killing everybody. So what they do is they take this land, and guess who they sell it to? They're selling this land to China. And now all this stuff that I'm talking about starts to get whitewashed off the internet, but you can actually still find it. And let's go over race right quick, because race is the fucking dumbest thing. It's one of my pet peeves on the fucking planet, because we all come from the same source. It's ridiculous. Because the first man, Adam, was created from the soil of the earth, right? So all the elements in our bodies can be found on this planet, in the earth. All the elements in this body is found on the earth. Like, for example, the earth is mainly water. Our bodies are mainly water, right? One of the main elements in sand is also in our bodies, and all the different colors of skin you can find in the earth, in sand, in mud, in clay, and stuff like that. This is all our different colors, right? And I've already said this to a certain particular group on Instagram, but it's common sense where the different colors come from, even though we all come from the same source. Like, it usually takes me, when it goes from about winter to summer, it takes me about a week before I start to tan, and I do that. I mean, it's going to happen because I love being at pools, I love being at beaches, I like being in the mountains, I like just being outdoors, just shirt off, carefree, and feeling the sun and stuff like that. I love that. I've been to Africa, and I went outside one day in a pair of shorts. One day, I was outside one day in Africa. I got completely red that night. The next day, I was completely tan in one day. I was shocked and shook. Normally it takes me like a week. It was one day in the African sun. So start to think about what would happen. And our skin color comes from a pigmentation, a pigment in there. I think it's called melanin or something like that. If you have a lot more, your skin's going to be darker. If you have a lot less, it's going to be less dark. But it's all the same skin. It just has a different pigment. So think about people living in that kind of weather for like thousands of years. They got darker skin. Now I've also been to Russia. It's very cold there. Most people have fair skin. Now you think about people in Mexico and Hawaii. They have very bronze skin. The Indians, who were normally in America, they had very reddish skin. But you think about the different temperatures and stuff like that in different places, and then common sense will tell you where the skin color came from. But we all come from the same source. And I love that God will give perfect examples of that when the system is malfunctions and you can see the differences like this. So this whole thing about racism is just bullshit because we all come from the same source. We're part of the same family. It's just different personalities and stuff like that, and genetics that are passed on from family members and taught down the road is what makes us different. But we all come from the same source. It's just pigmentation. But now, so now in South Africa, where they're doing a race war of manipulation to get land, is being sold to China. China is the exact same place the coronavirus was created. A race war, and then China's benefiting from it. And the coronavirus comes from there. Now, China also is a place right now where a real revolution is going on because China is censoring people and taking control and taking away their freedoms. Like, did you know that they will monitor people, and if they, if they do things, too many things, like play too many video games or buy certain stuff and stuff like that, they will veto them from traveling anywhere. They'll lock them down. They're taking away their freedoms, and that's why there's a real rebellion going on in China right now, because they're taking away their freedoms in China. And then, also the same place, after Bill Gates talks about this, they do a coronavirus that is shipped all the way over to the United States. And interestingly enough, is on February 22nd, 2020, a thank you letter is given to Bill Gates from China to Bill Gates, thanking him for the $100 million he donated to China for the virus. Right? So this comes over to America. The virus that comes over to America that Bill Gates predicted in 2015, a race war is done in Africa. China is benefiting from it. And then Bill Gates gives $100 million to China for the virus. A month later, March 24th, 2 days after my birthday, Bill Gates puts in for a patent for a one world currency and a tracker on every single person in the world to have a one world currency and to track them in everything they do, to where they can be tracked, and then they can get currency by a massive internet type deal. Wasn't that interesting? And the patent number is W0-2020-060606. And China's lucky number, I'm not making this up, is 666. Don't take my word for it. Google it. So this part's for the Christian. And it doesn't matter if you're atheist or Christian. I'm just showing this part for the Christians. All right? Because even if you're atheist, this plan is really going into effect. It doesn't matter atheist or Christian. This plan is really going to affect. But I'm going to leave this Bible verse right here, side by side, by the patent that Bill Gates put in on March 24th or 26th or something of 2020. Look at this side by side with this Bible verse. Check this out. So what's going on in America right now? Well, let's break that down. We got a fabricated race war. We got a coronavirus that are shutting down businesses and trying to do control and manipulation on people. The media is spreading this like crazy, hiding things that are really happening. Like, you know, when the riots were happening, at that very particular moment, Hillary was in court for email scandals, and she was losing in court and still is, where they have enough to indict her and Obama for the treasons that they were doing. That wasn't on the news. It's diverting attention. This is all lies and stuff to divert of what's really going on. And I'm going to give you an example, because Jesus liked to teach in parables to help understand complex things in a simpler manner to where everybody can grasp it. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to use Star Wars as an example of what's really going on and how this is a different type of war. A different type of war from China and other parts of the world towards America. And it isn't just towards America, it's for the entire world. This is a different type of world war. But and I'm going to refer back to the Clone Wars. And if you're a Star Wars fan and haven't seen the Clone Wars, what are you doing with your life? The sequel prequels are the sequels, the Disney sequels, which were fucking turd garbage, should be flushed down the fucking toilet. But then the Clone Wars, amazing, especially the last 4 episodes, brilliant. But we're going to use the Clone Wars as an example, because how did one man defeat all his enemies and take over the entire galaxy? Right, so what did he do? He fabricated a war, right? So that he could build up an army. 2 armies. Fabricated a war, a fake war, and build up 2 armies, and manipulated everybody to fight against each other so that he could build up an army. Then what he did is he did a false narrative against the Jedis, because the Jedis were good guys, but they were his enemy. He didn't like their ideology because he says he was different from them. What he did is he did a false narrative saying they were the bad guys, and then turned that army build up against them, wiping them out. And with all the destruction, after all that was done, the chaos he produced to create an army to wipe out his enemies who were strong enough to take him down, what did he do when everything was settled? He took everything for himself and took it all over after the chaos. And that's how one man took over an entire galaxy in Star Wars. This is exactly what China's doing. Instead of going head on with a war, what they're doing is building up a false narrative of an invisible bad guy to separate people with division, so that, I mean, this is war. We're actually having casualties of people actually getting shot and killed and stuff like that, but it's internal. This is a war of the mind. This isn't a war of the muscle or anything like that. This war has to be fought with the common people, not military. That's what they're doing, is they're causing a division to break down the system, and then after it's all destroyed, take over full control. And we've been warned by this. There's this guy, Miles Quack. He came over to America and got asylum, and he's been trying to warn everybody of what China's really been doing for years. Check this out.
And I think telling your story to the people of the world and the people of America and China and everywhere else is very important for the world to understand what China's grand strategy is.
Then I want to give America the warning.
Yes.
you are in dangerous way. You are too naive to believe the CCP.
Yes. You say that America is too naive to believe what the CCP say.
Yes.
Yes.
This is why I won't provide about the CCP any truth. Political, culture, army, and economy.
Yes.
This is why I'm here. This is why is CCP want to take me back. They pay the billions. They send the people to come to America, want to use any solution, make the deal, send me back, and try kidnap me. Then, 1 year ago, I have a press conference in the DC. I called all the American world. China CCP has a plan called 3F. It's one is weak America.
Weak in America.
Weak America.
Yes.
2, to make kill America. This is very seriously.
Okay.
3 is make a terminal America. 不稳定怎么说呢？terminal. No stable.
Okay. Got it.
So
unstable.
I give
yeah.
the warning, but very bad. I think 1 year ago, somebody think this guy is a crazy guy, liar guy,
Correct.
reaper guy, don't need trust.
Right.
Then this is the year, you look before, 1 year
You
ago,
look
what
back.
happened?
Yeah.
What
and
has
you
happened?
see everything that happened.
Yeah, this is happened.
Yeah.
This is why the few months about actually the chairman died, Provence, the French.
Yes.
All the people, Miles Guo maybe talk is true. So CCP have a strategy, 3F America.
Got it.
Take you down.
Yep.
This is a strategy.
And
no
for,
doubt.
for those that haven't seen you before on video, 1 year ago you predicted that the chairman of HNA would be killed within a year.
Yes, sir.
And 363 days later, he fell off a wall in Provence.
Yes.
That's an entirely fascinating video. I'm gonna leave that in the a link to that in the description. Actually, all the videos I reference, I'll leave in the descriptions. But I highly suggest watching that entire thing. It's very fascinating. But another interesting thing that's been going on is not just the enemies that are overseas, which have been attacking America, but the ones that would want, like the people that are here in America, that would also push for this. The enemies of America that are in America. And when I was in the Marine Corps, I took an oath to protect the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And the domestic ones are making themselves known. We're also pushing for the same type of control that's trying to be pushed and forced on everybody. And again, remember, this isn't just for America. They're wanting to push this agenda for the entire world. And they have tactics the way they do that. It's they use fear, lying, labeling people, and nowadays people are so scared of being labeled something that they'll go along with something that they don't even agree with, just out of fear of what other people think about them. Who gives a fuck what other people think about you? Stand up for what's right. That's the most important thing, and that eventually people are going to back you up, but you have to stand up for what's right. And I'm sick of people so scared of other people not liking them, and that's a form of manipulation and control. But here's the biggest one for the biggest one tactic that they use is, instead of arguing, they'll use emotion instead of logic. Okay, for example, I'm going to use George Floyd's death as the example of how emotions are being used as a tactic. Okay, because as an artist, I know how to take an image and produce an emotional response to it. That's what artists do. Like people in like visual arts or like movies and stuff like that, they'll be able to take a certain scene and portray an emotion, right? And I do that all the time because I draw. Well, see, George Floyd's face produces a certain type of emotion. And that whole scenario, what happened with Derek and George, produced an emotion of racism, even though it had nothing to do with racism. See, George was breaking the law. He was on drugs. He was trying to buy stuff with counterfeit bill. He'd been in and out of prison. Derek comes in. He performed the right procedure to get him handcuffed, but then he pushed it too far. It was on Derek. But what it did, and he's being charged for that, good. But what that did is it painted a picture that produced an emotion of racism. It wasn't about racism. It produced an emotion because of the faces. It's what it portrayed. So what happened is it caused an emotional response. How do you argue with facts against emotion? You can't. That's hard to do. It's kind of like, these guys, you ever been in an argument with your girlfriend or your wife when she's emotionally charged, emotionally angry? What good does it do you if you're going to argue with a girl with facts when she's angry or pissed off? Does nothing. All it does is escalate it more, right? Kind of like, so all these riots were produced from the emotion of that. And like Chaz was produced from an emotion, right? All this was from emotion. And how do you actually win an argument when it's fueled by emotion? This is a tactic that's being used, right? It's hard to logically do it. Now, one of the most brilliant things I saw that Trump did is like when all this exploded and the riots were going on, Trump went to these governors like, here, I'll send in the military to help clean this up. And the ones who are shitheads said, no, we don't want your help. So he's like, all right, and he backed off. That is the most brilliant thing he could have done, because if I'm in an argument with a girl and she gets, like, if a girl wants to argue with me or something like that, let's just say it doesn't matter if she's doing wrong or something like that, and I know I'm right, but she's pissed off. I know that's a losing battle. What do? I step back. I remove myself from the situation and let her explode. So what that does is it shows her where she's wrong, and she ends up showing that she's wrong. And everybody sees that she's wrong, and she ends up knowing that she's wrong. And when the emotions die down, then you can actually reason. And that's exactly what Trump did with that whole scenario with like Chaz and stuff like that. When the emotions were at its peak and he said, I'll help, and they're like, no, you just step back, let them implode, and it showed how in the wrong they were. And then when it was time to clean it up, what happened? That stupid fucking governor who allowed Chaz to happen, when they finally came to her house and defaced her property, what'd she do? She sent out an order to have Chaz in Seattle. Chaz cleaned up. Took less than an hour. Cops came in and cleaned it all up. But the emotion had already passed. And see, these are tactics that they're used, but one of the most brilliant things he ever did is he removed himself from the situation and let them self-destruct. And see, these are tactics that the enemies that want to take away your freedom are actually doing. Using emotion to where you can't argue with them or logic with them. You understand? Because, like, remember George Floyd's face produces that emotion, but somebody like that one cop, the 77-year-old cop who was also killed, David Dorn, his face doesn't produce that same type of emotion. That's why they didn't use them. They're picking and choosing their battles to manipulate people by emotion, not by facts and logic, by emotion. And this is to cause chaos so they can take control later. Because the whole thing about all this, trying to get all this division in America is ridiculous. Because if you're a legal citizen of the United States, every single person in the United States has all the same rights. We all have the exact same rights. So this trying to division and making up these invisible trying to make up these invisible bullshit narratives, are just trying to cause division. And with the separation, it'll be easier to control later. So what would be the mindset behind this ruler in China and Bill Gates, where these pieces of shit motherfuckers are wanting to control the entire world? That's what they're trying to do. And the reason that they would want to put make a one world currency is because that's about control. Because what they want to do is they want to monitor everybody and put it in a one world currency. That way they can track everything you do. And if you start doing things that they don't like, they can lock your account. It's about control and taking away people's freedoms. I've seen this shit happen before. Okay, and this is a true story. I know there's a story about this dude. Started off poor, cool dude. Started off with nothing. He grew up poor, then worked his ass off for 2 jobs, 7 days a week. Was able to buy a 4-bedroom house, and dude busted his ass for it, and he did it all on his own. And loved his house, remodeling and stuff like that. Always paid his taxes, always did everything. Okay, one year he was waiting on some things that didn't come in yet for his taxes, so he was going to do an extension, but he, working all the time, he lost track of time. One day after the close, and he forgot to get in his extension for his taxes. One day after his the time was up for the taxes, IRS went into his account, took thousands of dollars out of his bank account, put him in the hole about $1,500, and they locked his account without him asking, without him knowing, without him thinking that it was just a mistake. He was going to do it, but he was working so much he lost track of time, and he didn't even know they could do that. They did that, locked his account, and because he was by himself and working by himself, one hiccup like that, he was unable to recover, lost his house. I know this is a true story. And I know somebody else that it kind of happened to also, where they missed theirs. IRS went in and took out, it was only like $500 or something like that, which is a big deal to a bunch of people. And he went to go and file his taxes after that because he knew he screwed up. That $500 didn't go to his taxes. They kept it. See, this is the kind of, this is what they would do if they were able to control all the money and track every single thing you would do. This is about fucking controlling everybody. What kind of mindsets would somebody have to want to control people like that? Like these two fucking pieces of shit would want to control everybody like that. Well, actually, that's interesting. Let's look into that, shall we? Okay, this video of Jordan Peterson was dropped in 2017. This is when he was still a professor in Toronto, Canada. But listen to this that he did years ago, talking about Hitler. And think about COVID-19. Watch this. This is fascinating.
You think about a totalitarian state, you think about the Nazis and their goose stepping. What's happening is that every single person in the military becomes an identical unit, right? They're all uniform, and they're all, in some sense, imitating the dictator in an absolutely perfect way. And so the dictator wants to impose strict uniformity on the entire population. That's order. Order. And one of the things we've discovered that's really interesting is that disgust sensitivity is associated with orderliness, and that's associated with conscientiousness. And one of the things about Hitler was that he was very disgust sensitive, and a lot of his hatred for non-Aryans. So imagine inside the Aryan box it was all uniform, outside it was all parasites and predators. And that was a manifestation of disgust, not of fear. It's a whole different thing. And if you read Hitler's Table Talk, which is a collection of his spontaneous dinner speeches from 1939 to 1942. It's a very interesting book. You see that his metaphor for the Aryan race was a body, a pure body, unassaulted by parasites or predators, and that he was trying to erect a border around it to keep all of that away. So it's an immunological disgust-like metaphor. And there's some recent work that was published in PLOS One about 3 years ago showing that, brilliant study, should have got much more attention, showing that if you went around and sampled political attitudes in different countries, or even within the same country, what you found was that the higher the prevalence of infectious diseases, the higher the probability of totalitarian political attitudes at the local level. And you can imagine, well, what happens if there's infectious diseases is you want to put borders around everything. You don't want free movement between ideas or people, because that's partly how the disease spreads. You're going to have much more strict sexual rules, for example, because that's a great way for diseases to be transmitted. And before Hitler went on his rampage against the non-Aryans, he cleaned up all the factories. Like, he went in there and fumigated them. It was part of the law. And he went on a public health campaign to get rid of tuberculosis, and he got rid of the bugs in the factories as well. He used Zyklon B. That's an insecticide, and that's the gas that he used in the gas chambers eventually. So first it was the bugs in the rats, and then it was people who were, then it was euthanasia. That was the next move, and forced euthanasia. And the rationale for that was compassion, by the way, just so you all know. It's merciful to put these people who are burdensome to themselves and their families and the state, who are living second-rate lives. It's merciful to euthanize them. And that was a huge campaign in Germany. It was after that that the more racial purifications began.
Wasn't that interesting? Also, did you know that Jordan Peterson basically predicted something like the riots actually happening? Check this out.
Would you agree with me in the sentiment that the left has pushed so hard for total control of our society over the last however many years? It's almost to a point where saying 2013 was a different time. Would you say that because they pushed so hard, they've created this backlash, and the backlash caused them to backlash back again, so they doubled down with their ideology, and then they lose another argument, they lose another ideological war, they lose another meme war, and they double down again.
We'll untangle some of that. Okay, so first of all, the first observation is a really interesting one, because you know that things can go out of hand very, very rapidly.
Yeah.
And the reason they do that is because of positive feedback loops. Now, the thing that Kurzweil talks about is a positive feedback loop. An intelligent machine makes another intelligent machine that makes another intelligent machine. And that's a positive feedback loop, and that can spiral upwards out of control very rapidly. And that's what polarization is. It's like, I tap you, you tap me. I slap you, you punch me. Well, up it goes. Well, I think that's partly why in the New Testament, for example, there's an injunction that says, turn the other cheek, resist not evil. Why? Because otherwise you get into a positive feedback loop, and then you better look the hell out. And things can tilt very, very rapidly, because we're at a point now where, under the wrong circumstances, if the wrong person does the wrong thing, that the consequences will be very grave. Now, we can't predict which action is going to precipitate that, or even if that will happen. But it's chaotic enough so that it could happen. So, so govern yourselves accordingly. Now, the problem is that there are people who would be happy if there was blood running in the street.
So why is all this separation and this division that's going on with things like social justice warriors, Black Lives Matter, feminists, everything that's causing this division? Why is this dangerous? Let's watch this and think about this for a bit.
The idea of the divine individual, that is the West. So if we subsume that under group identity, then we will perish painfully. And God only knows what will go along with us. Maybe everything. So it's a bad, look what happened in the 20th century when people put group identity first. How much bloody evidence do you need? The communists did it for good reasons, and the Nazis did it for bad reasons. It's like, it didn't matter. Tens of millions of people died horribly as a consequence. And I'm concerned because the universities are so overwhelmed by this that I can't see how they can extract themselves from it. It's like, let's say, just for the sake of argument, that at the beginning of the Russian Revolution, that 20% of the communists were really concerned about the poor. Maybe we could say 50%, just to be arbitrary about it. The other 50% were jealous and resentful about anyone who had anything more than they did. All right, now that you put those two groups head to head in a battle for 4 years and see who's standing at the end. Even if you are one of those utopians who actually cares for the dispossessed, when the revolution comes, you can bloody well be sure that your head's going to be first on the chopping block. because the people who are motivated by hate are going to be a lot more vicious in their attempts to eradicate than you're going to be, what would you call it, effective in your attempts to save. That whole game, that whole identity politics game, that is dangerous beyond belief. And it's predicated fundamentally on resentment and the desire to devolve people back into a tribal antagonism.
See, this is why it's so important not to ignore our history and the things that's happened, because you can learn from the past. And also why this constant trying to separate and divide people is so dangerous, because it's not focusing on the individual, because we're all complex people, right? And trying to group them in certain groups without actually having a conversation of complex things. But it's interesting how Hitler set up his fascination that led to what he did is set up kind of like what's going on exactly with the COVID-19 mentality. On top of that, here's another interesting thing that found out about in Hitler's autopsy, and let this sink in so you can start to understand how this would affect somebody's personality. In his autopsy, he had a deformed micropenis. So imagine how that would mess with somebody's mind and their psychology of their confidence in themselves and the way they would look at other people having that kind of thing. Interestingly enough, kind of like the leader of China right now he doesn't like being made fun of. Like people compare him to Winnie the Pooh. So Winnie the Pooh has been banned from China. Start thinking about the psychology of somebody like that, who can't take a joke, who looks at, who takes their insecurities out on other people, exactly like Hitler did. These are normal human beings, but when somebody sees you as a threat and comes after you to attack you, it's usually because of their own personalities and their own insecurities that they try to project on other people. Like, haters are your biggest fans. Think about that. Let that sink in. And the psychology of what it is for people like Bill Gates and China to want to take over the entire world. And especially to attack America. Why the fuck won't you just leave America alone and just mind your own fucking business? See? What's the psychology of wanting to go after something and people that are not yours and take away their freedoms? Think about this. So, that China leader, whatever your name is, Ziyao or whatever, fuck you. Why don't you go sit on a dildo and twist? Now, me saying something like that, does that piss you off? Because it probably does. See, in China right now, just saying that would be censored. They wouldn't do that because this piece of shit motherfucker doesn't like being made fun of. But this is America and there's freedom of speech. Fuck you, you insecure little bitch. Why you want to attack America? What, did you see The Hangover or something? That pissed you off? That movie was funny as fuck. Get over it. Also, you, Bill Gates, you little traitor piece of shit. You probably got a micropenis too, because if you didn't, I'd say take that thing, shove it between your legs, wrap it between your legs, shove it up your ass, and go fuck yourself, you little traitor piece of shit. I can't stand people who try to control other people. Drives me nuts. I love that there's, I can't remember what it is, but there's this verse in the Bible where it talks about Jesus going out in the field with his disciples and they're hungry and they just start peeling some corn and they start eating. And some Pharisees or whatever, like, he didn't wash his hands. And he goes off on it. Do you see how interesting that is? Especially in a situation like we got now, where they want to force regulations on people, which is ridiculous. You're not, and just like these governors who are forcing people to put masks on and stuff. It's bullshit. It's a fucking lie. You're being lied to about this stuff. See, the thing is, this COVID-19, you're being lied to. You're being lied to straight to your fucking face. I mean, all you have to do is open your eyes. I've never seen CNN jump on the dick of something so fucking hard as they did COVID-19. It's a fucking bullshit lie. All you gotta do is open your eyes. Like, they want to close down businesses, and especially churches. Like in China, what they did is when they sent everybody home for COVID-19 as a quarantine, they went and bulldozed the churches. Think about that. Because he doesn't like the ideology. Kind of like the Emperor does in Star Wars. He doesn't like Jedi's ideology because it would trump him. He knows he can't take over when that ideology is going on, and Christian ideology is going against what China wants to do. So, and it's a fucking lie when they try to send everybody home. You can't open your business, you can't be around, you have to do this, you have to wear masks. But this is okay, and this is okay. They're not even apologizing of lying straight to your face. Okay, now without, and I want to go over this, without the filter of the lies of like the media. See, I have friends who work at the hospitals, okay? So there's 2 hospitals in this town, and when COVID-19 was said to come here, it was projected that we'd have like 700 cases, right? You know how many actual cases were in one of the hospitals? 10. And the other hospital started off at 3, now it's up to 9. Everybody 100% recovery. But what they're actually doing, and I'm getting this from the horse's mouth from people who actually work at the hospital, because they don't care about telling me in secret. What they're doing is, when people come in and they're getting tested, everybody's coming back negative because nobody fucking has it. But if they get somebody in that with surgery who already had it, maybe even passed, doesn't matter. They keep them in there in quarantine. Why? Because the hospital is getting $30,000 each patient they find with COVID-19. So of course they're puffing up the numbers, but nobody's in the fucking hospitals. That's why they're laying people off at the hospital, because nobody's going to the hospitals. They're off at fucking home. And if somebody gets it, they stay home and they get better. It's kind of like the flu. You know, the flu kills average about 56,000 people a year. It's anywhere between, yearly it'll be like 12,000 to 80,000, so roughly around 56,000 people a year. The common flu kills about 56,000 people a year. Now let's repackage it, make it a little bit worse, and then put it out, and then create mass hysteria. Why? So you can give up a little bit of your control. A little bit of control that they will not give back now. Remember, when it came out, nobody knew exactly what was going on with COVID, so we kind of like trusted it. It'd be like, you go inside for about a month, we'll deal with it then. That was months ago. And then we'll slowly open up, but they're not doing that. They're keeping it. Why? Because of control. It's past that point. And here's the thing. The way you fucking end this stuff is you don't listen to them. You have got to take that control back. If you want to win this war, the common people have to take that control back from them, because they're not going to give it back up. That's what's going on. By the way, I had a solid prediction of what will happen what will happen when the country opens back up and stuff like that. I promise you, when people start acting normal again, this whole COVID-19 stuff, it'll be dropped. That's what that's what media does all the time. It's like they throw shit against the wall until they see something that sticks. When it finally sticks, they go crazy over that one thing, because all they want to do is control. But I promise you, once you start living your lives and you start ignoring them, they lose interest in it because it takes away their power. And that's what's going on. And another story I want to tell you about what happened, something that happened around here is there's a factory around here. One person found, there's this dude who they found out who had COVID-19. So they go in and they make sure nobody leaves the factory, and they bring a team in to check every single person in the factory. Everybody came back negative. There's only that one guy who got it. Guess what? Everybody's getting full recoveries on this too. And I've lived on the East Coast my entire life. Most of my entire life. I've been all the way up to New York, all the way down to the Florida Keys. My grandpa used to have 2 houses side by side in the Florida Keys. I've been up and down. I've lived in California for 6 months. I've been all over the world. I've been to Russia, Spain, Italy, Canary Islands, Barcelona, France, Greece, I legit can't remember all the places I've been. Turkey. I've ended up meeting a lot of people in my life. Do you know how many people I know who's actually gotten it this entire time? 2. And that was yesterday. That's it. Other than that, I know nobody else, and they're going to make a full recovery. And everybody else I know, they don't know anybody who's got it. I know hundreds of people. It's bullshit. So how does a person fight this kind of war? Well, the thing about it is this is not a war that's going to be won with the military. It's going to be won with the common people. And the common people, you have to take your freedoms back, or they're going to keep going freaking crazy. Like, if you have a business, if I had a business, I would open it. I don't give a fuck what they say. The Constitution was set up to protect your rights so that a government couldn't take you over. Like China's trying to do, like America's trying, like these governors are trying to take away your freedoms. Like your Second Amendment rights to own this, something like this, is not just for protection from normal people. Read the Constitution. It is to protect you from a government going rogue. The forefathers knew this because they did that with Great Britain and stuff like that. They fought for their freedom away from a tyrant government to try to take them over. So they set up things in place just so it wouldn't happen again to the common people. The Constitution is set to protect you from this exact type of stuff. Those governors. Oh, and by the way, when it comes to that thing, the Marine Corps, and that's my home security system, and the Marine Corps and Blackwater taught me very well of how to use that. But the Constitution is set up so that you have freedoms that can't be taken away. Also, these governors and stuff like that are forcing you to say, like, you have to wear a mask, you have to do this. That's breaking the law. They are breaking the law. If you have a business, it's your constitutional right and your freedom to go open that fucking business. That's your right. That is your right to take that risk. If you get sick, that's on you. If you can't, that's like getting in your car and going to your job. You know, when you're driving there, you have the possibility of somebody else hitting you, right? You also have the possibility of hitting somebody else. That doesn't mean you stop driving. All right, we gave them their chance with their month. Now, after that, we're just going to have to figure this out as we go. But you have the right to open your businesses. It is against the law for them to say that you have to shut it down. You have that right to take that risk. That is your freedom to do that. Somebody else wants to go to your business and buy something, they have that freedom. That's their risk. They can catch the flu, they can catch corona, and then if you catch a disease, what do? You go home and you get better. This is the only way you win this war. But what they're doing is trying to force things on you, and do not submit to it. You have to take this back because it's dangerous not to. This is the kind of war that's going on because China wants to take control over everybody and then take all your freedoms away. And that's what's going on, and that's the mental war that's been happening right now. Okay, so let's go over this timeline one more time so it's clear, in order. So 2015, Bill Gates comes up with this, starts talking about this, America isn't ready for the next virus that hits. Almost quoting word for word exactly the way the coronavirus would be spread and everything about the coronavirus. This is in 2015. All right, 2018, in Africa, they start doing a race thing where they start killing white farmers under the flagship of killing white farmers. They're actually killing everybody. Killing farmers, taking their lands, and selling it to China. China, end of 2019, beginning of 2020, make and produce a virus exactly like the one Bill Gates said, called the coronavirus. And it starts hitting everybody. And they send this virus over to the United States. Alright, in February, China thanks Bill Gates for the $100 million that he donated for corona relief, right? In March, he puts in his patent, W0, World Order 2020 060606 for a patent for a tracker on everybody to track her with a one world currency. Alright, and this is a month apart. At the exact same time, a race war and the coronavirus is taking away people's freedoms in America. And basically, they're trying to spread this throughout the entire world. Do you see what's going on here? What's actually happening? At the same time, some of these governors are also trying to take people's freedoms away and not give them back their constitutional rights to be free, run their businesses and do their jobs and do stuff like this. They're forcing them to do certain things that have never been done before. So, how do you... Okay, America, you have been put in a new war. This war is not won by the military. This war will have to be won by the common people. Common people, you all have... How do you win a war like this? All you do is you live your life and succeed. That's what shuts this entire thing down. You go out, you actually have to take your freedoms back. You tell these, like I already emailed my governor and said, I'm not going along with your fucking, I have to be forced to wear a mask type deal. That's my fucking freedom to say fuck you. Alright? And then just live your life. You have a business, open it. If, like, Seattle, 50 businesses are now suing the governor for the bullshit that she let go crazy. That's the right steps of taking back your freedoms. You have to take your freedoms back from these people and live your life and succeed. And then take time off of this thing. Alright? Turn this off. Go live your life. Spend time with the people that are around you and ignore some of the dumb shit that's constantly on here. If somebody comes to attack you, you defend yourself. You have that right. You defend yourselves if they attack you. And stop worrying about what everybody fucking thinks about you. Do what's right. Who gives a fuck if they don't like you? If they're they don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck about your opinion. Why the fuck do you have to give a fuck about their opinion? Live your life and do what's right. That's how you win this war. So I want to make this part clear. And I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I don't really care. I'm not wearing a mask. I will not wear a mask. And the thing about it is, I don't care if people label me for that. And here's another thing. And this is... I'm not here to compromise this. This needs to happen. Open up America again. Actually, open up the whole world. This needs to happen. It should have never been closed in the first place, because I remember when I first heard that they were going to close America for a month, I was like, that's kind of weird and it's kind of stupid. But because here's the thing, open up America and you start ignoring all this bullshit that's being shoved down your throat, and I promise you one thing, that all that when the side sees that they can't manipulate you or control you with fear or anything like that, they drop it and they try to find something else. That's what's going to happen. But the way this stops is you have to stand up, take your freedoms back, and it takes each individual person to do it. Where you say, no more. I'm not doing this. I'm not listening to you. I don't really care. I don't care if you label me, because I know who I am as a person. God knows who I am. And I'm going to deal with this day to day, but I'm not going to let this fear and stuff control my life to where I'm going to hide in a fucking bubble for my whole life for you to take away my freedoms. That's how you stop this war. That's how you win this war, actually, is by doing things like that. And stop being afraid of being labeled. If you know who you are as a person, if the people around you know who you are as a person, if God knows who you are as a person, and if God's on your side, there's nobody can defeat you. If He wants you to win, nobody can defeat you. You stand up for what's right and be willing to go all the way. I've made the decision. I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not going to listen to that. That is my freedom. That's my right. I don't give a fuck if somebody else does it, but shoving it down somebody else's throat, that's where the line has to be stopped and drawn to where you stand up and say, no more. And these businesses that are given in to these minorities, and it is a minority. So I want to give you an example. When you hear the term silent majority, that's true. Because the majority that's silent, why are they going to say anything when they're happy with what they have and the way things are? They're not going to say anything. It's the smaller group who bitches and moans and complains and stuff like that, and they get together. And what happens if you business owners, people like, and you can see this like in the NFL, if you give in to them a little bit, it will never be enough because you just validated them. And it will never, and I mean never, be enough to satisfy them, because they will continue to want more and more and more and try to control you. And if you were to sit down with each of these people who are hiding, they're hiding behind this. All you see is their opinions. You don't see them as people. You'll find out that they are weak. They don't know what they're talking about. Some of them are stoners, some of them are kids, some are just freaking bitter people, weak people who don't know what it's like to get into the position that you have gotten into, and you're listening to them. Stop it. Stop listening to them and stop giving up your creativity and your vision for a small minority, and they are the minority. Because the majority isn't going to say anything when they're happy. They're just content with it. Stop giving it up, because it'll never be enough. You have to step up and say no. And it starts with each individual. People making the decision, every single person making the decision, say, no, this stops, this ends now. You've been drafted, everybody's been drafted into a world war that they don't want to be in. But you're in it, and it's time to fight it and win. Either you be submissive and be bulldozed over by a minority, doesn't give a fuck about you, they just like their validation, or you stand up and you will see how weak they actually are, how easy it is to defeat them if you have thick skin. All you need is thick skin, and that's it. That's how you win this war. But it starts with the individual, and you have to be able to say no more. That's it. And you go after and people who are taking away your freedoms, you go after them because they're in the wrong. The law's on your side. And you say no more, and if they don't listen, you get rid of them and get somebody else in their place who will follow the law, who will get your freedoms back. This is how this war is won. This is what needs to be done. But what I do want to say is I actually do believe wholeheartedly that we will win this war. That this war that's against all of us, the war of the mind, I believe we'll win it, because I'm seeing it. I'm seeing people everybody's tired of all this division. They're tired of this shit being shut down throats. They're tired of the freedoms being taken away. And I just see even Democrats, it doesn't matter, even Democrats are coming around saying the things that are being done. They're like, this isn't us. We're not about it. We don't want this. I'm seeing people come together because of this, because of all this stupid stuff, and people are catching on. They're getting red pilled. And just like when I was saying in South Africa, under the flagship of racism, they were killing whites and blacks. It's just like Black Lives Matter's narrative, where they're shoving down everybody's throats, where it's under the flagship of racism. But I mean, they're killing more blacks than they have whites, and they're destroying just as many black businesses as they are white businesses. And their own brothers and sisters are now the ones pushing back and fighting against them. You got like Candace Owens, you got Officer Tatum, and so on and so forth. These people are just fed up with it, and we want to come together. Nobody wants this. I don't even like making this video. I want to get back to making like positive videos, but this is something I want to get off my chest and show people where we should be focusing our energy and what we should be doing. But first thing, open up this country. Stop with these lies. If somebody wants to put on a spacesuit and want to go outside because they're scared anything will touch them, that's their freedom. But other people should have the freedom to just go out and be themselves and stuff like that. Because these people are breaking the law. These governors are breaking the law, trying to take away your freedoms. And these same people, and get this, the same people who were, when they were trying to impeach Trump, that were saying, nobody's above the law. Check this out.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one's above the law.
No one is above the law.
That no person is above the law.
Nobody should be above the law.
Nobody should be above the law.
No one is above the law.
No.
Those same people right now are breaking the law, and you have the rights. Everybody has the rights to go after them, to do what's right, to make your voices be known. You have to take back your freedoms because this is an enemy coming after you, and either whether you want to or not, you actually actively have to take back your freedoms. But I believe here in America, because our DNA was founded on freedom, that everybody here, we just believe in fighting for freedom. I mean, that's what America was founded on, and America fought for its freedom in Great Britain, to have freedom of religion, have freedom of speech, and stuff like that. And everybody's equal, and that you're based on the things that you do, not because of what family or whatever you were born in. And speaking about South Africa, they were the ones that were selling their own people into slavery back in the day. And the whole world was doing slavery. And in America, after we set ourselves free from everything else, Americans started looking around saying, this is wrong. This is wrong. And we fought each other for this. And we all fought together, shoulder to shoulder. A lot of people died. And we won that war. And it changed the world. And the fuck, if we're going to let some fucking cheesy ass pieces of shit come in and try to take our freedoms. Fuck that, man. I just believe that we'll win this, because I see people waking up and they're tired of it. They're tired of the narrative. They're tired of separation. It's exhausting. We want to come together, do what's right. And I've always said, and I believe this too, that, and this is the last message I'm going to leave off on, because I've always told everybody that you can't change anybody. There's no person on the planet that can change another person. You can't change anybody. That's impossible. There's only one person on the planet that you can change. It's yourself. But when you change yourself, it actually affects other people. So you become the positive change. And when people see you changing yourself and doing what's right, they follow in suit because they want to be more like that. And it's just, like Peter said, a positive feedback loop where we come together, but it has to start with the individual. It has to start with you, and that's how the war wins. It goes down to each individual to do what's right, and I believe that'll happen.
If you only know how to behave, you're just a domesticated house cat or a lap dog. Yeah. You have to push beyond the persona, and that's what the integration of the shadow does from the Jungian perspective. It's like to pull that monster that's being edited out of you, to pull that back in and to allow that to reveal itself within your increasingly sophisticated way of being. And then you're not just a persona. You can't escape from your persona unless you can say no. Here's an example from popular culture. In the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter's obviously the hero of the story, but he's touched by malevolence, right? The only reason he can stand up against evil is because there's some evil in him that he's incorporated, essentially. Well, that's exactly right. And the persona, if you're a persona, then you're an obedient citizen. But the problem with being an obedient citizen is that if the society tells you to march the Jews off to the death camp, for example, and you're obedient, then that's what you'll do. And it isn't like society is civilized and then all of a sudden you're performing some act of atrocity. That isn't how it works. It's like you're obedient citizen and then you're asked to violate your conscience a little bit.
Yeah.
And you have to, because you don't have anything other than that persona. And that's obedience. And so a little more obedience is demanded and you say, okay, well, and then you're a little bent, because the society is becoming a little bent, and then you're a little weaker. And then you're asked to violate your conscience a little bit more, and you think, well, there's a little less of me and the pressure's on a little more, and I could have said no before, but I didn't. So you say yes again, then you say yes again, and then you have a society where 1/3 of the population is informing on the other 2/3. It's hell. It's like, well, so how do you say no? Well, that's the shadow. It's like, and see, the reason that the video I did about Bill C-16 and its compelled speech provisions went viral was because I said no. I didn't say it casually. What I meant was, there isn't anything that you can do to me that I can imagine that will force me to utter the words that you want me to utter. Nothing. And I meant it. And when I made the video, I think people could actually tell that I meant it. And so I took this abstract problem and made it concrete. I said, no, that's not happening. And that's part of the incorporation of the shadow.
But in this regard, the shadow is actually benevolent, not malevolent.
Well, once it's incorporated, yeah, well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to make of that in its entirety, because it sort of means that it means something like, because one of the old metaphysical problems is, why would God allow evil into the world? I think, well, maybe God didn't allow evil into the world. Maybe God allowed the possibility of evil into the world. That's different. And maybe the world with the possibility of evil is actually a better world than the world without the possibility of evil. It's something like that, in that maybe a man is better when he's a dangerous man who's being good than he would be if he was just a good man who wasn't capable of being dangerous. And I believe that, because the best men that I've ever met are very dangerous men. You don't mess with them.
Yeah.
So, and you know that as soon as you meet them.